if you're swapping between the two cleat systems, Speedplay has a very, very easy, clearly marked center line, right? What we're going to do is mark that onto the shoe. I'm using a whiteout pen. So what we're going to do is pull the base plate off, and then on your new Favero cleats here, which are labeled Expedo, but
which is different to the look cleats, a little bit different.
Yeah, compatible, cross-compatible, but they look different. They're a different color, although they have a similar amount of float to the gray Keo cleats. On the side of them, I don't know if that's even going to show up. There is a tiny little mark or a divot. You can see it in real life, but it's extremely faint. That is the center line of the cleat, and what I've done is actually marked one here. What we want is we want that to line up with where your center line was on the old shoes. So in this case, on this shoe, we're going to want a 5mm shim stack. We've got a 3 and a 2. These are Steve Hogg's laser cut shims, acrylic.
Why do I have shims?
Because you're a bit wonky, mate.
How many people walk out of your clinic with shims?
Lots. It'd have to be 3/4.
Is that because you make a lot of money off shims?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a conspiracy.
It's a conspiracy, that's right. Yes, no, it's a deliberate attempt to injure people so that they have to keep coming back. That's what it is.
That's another good conspiracy.
It's a good one. I've had that. I had that thought before. I don't even charge people for these because, you know, they're a couple of cents each or something.
Just quickly, if you don't know what a shim is, it's a small plate that sits between your cleat and cycling shoe to even out minor or major leg length discrepancies that can cause further issues up the kinetic chain. And some further context for you before Neil continues. Really, this video is designed for people to get a bike fitter's perspective on what you need to be thinking about if you're looking to or thinking about changing pedal systems, in particular from Speedplays to Look or to Shimano. And for me to share with you that this video, well, in fact, this whole channel is now sponsored by Assioma power pedals, which has been a long time coming given the fact they're an official partner over at the Road Cycling Academy. In fact, we're a small reseller of Assioma power pedals, have been for over 18 months now. And additionally, Assioma have become the cornerstone for all my power-based speed tests that are included in my reviews on this channel over the past 3 years. But given a 10-year stint on Speedplay pedals, and as somebody that started my journey on the Shimano pedal system, the migration to Look has been an apprehensive one. In fact, it's been 3 years jumping between Speedplay and Look, where I finally find myself in a position to say, actually, I do like the Look pedal system. Why? Let's get back to Neil first.
So these ones, basically, we're going to sit them under there. Now, the Speedplay base plate was pushed all the way back, but you can see that is not actually on the center line of, this is our center line on your shoe. They're actually staggered on these, so we're going to need to pull that forward a little bit. You can't just assume because the cleat is all the way back and the new cleat is all the way back as well, that it's actually, theoretically, the center line is actually in the same place. It's not a safe assumption when you're swapping between the sets. So what you want to do is mark your center lines and then actually physically line them up. I've got some longer than standard screws here. These are a 14mm long M5 stainless screw, which I've actually had custom made.
It's kind of as good as the way I've done my previous system.
Viewers at home spot the problem here. Not only is the screw in the front hole a Speedplay base plate screw, the other two are cheesehead screws from the local Bunnings, but there's also no retaining plate on that front screw, which is actually really dangerous, Cam.
Is it? Why?
Yeah, because that front, there's nothing holding that on except like tiny little bits of plastic that are clamped under the head of that screw.
Right.
So in a sprint, with your enormous sprint, it's
300
possible.
watts.
It's possible that could actually snap. There's quite a lot of lateral play here. It sort of measures at about sort of 7 or 8mm or so.
Okay.
Whereas your 3-bolt ones in particular, these don't, the Keos don't move sideways very much at all. And these move sideways very little, these Favero specific ones, these Expedos. These are the worst for side to side movement. The Shimanos are the next up and the Speedplays are the best. But sometimes that induces problems because the person puts them on accidentally in the wrong spot and they feel terrible. And so sometimes having more adjustment for a layperson who's setting them up as cells at home actually introduces measurement error.
I tried to go back to Shimano twice in the last 10 years.
Yes.
And I didn't like Shimano because it felt too wide, but I love the small contact point I felt of the Look, but you're saying it's all in my head.
A lot of things are in your head, Cam. Look, yeah, there is not a lot of size difference between the cleat. I'll show you a couple of these. Looking on top here, people go, well, look, the cleat is wider. Look how much wider the Shimano cleat is. It's got a bigger contact patch. But what you really want to know is, like, are these points, the two widest points of the Shimano cleat, actually doing anything? And the answer is no. These are basically for putting your foot on the ground and gripping the ground. So these don't actually come into contact with the pedal. Now, if you cut those bits off, from the side here to the outside there, you're looking at about 63, 65 millimeters. A Look Keo cleat, 63, 65 millimeters. The width of the pedal body, again, pretty damn similar. I'm blown away all the time by the fact that these two don't seem to infringe on each other's patents because they are so similar.
Who was the originator? Look, weren't they?
They were the first, I believe. Yeah. I'm not quite sure what the status of the patents is at the moment, but you will see aftermarket companies like SQ Labs producing Keo compatible pedals, or Favero producing Keo compatible pedals, but you very rarely see any producing Shimano compatible pedals, with the one exception being the new Favero Duo Shis with the 10mm longer axle. I would say that there's little differences between the radius of the front here, this front lip which loops in under the pedal body. You can see that the Look one has this kind of more triangulated shape, and this is rounder, which changes a lot of the feel of the float. And that is probably part of the difference for why you prefer one.
So I moved to Speedplay full-time around 2010 when I was getting some knee pain using Shimano pedals. One of the big advantages that the Speedplay pedal enables is a lot more float. And if you have a poor bike fit or an overall poor position on the bike, that float enables you to compensate a lot better. And in 2010, after transitioning to Speedplay, my knee pain went away and I was a Speedplay convert. Now, interestingly, I have not tried another pedal system since being properly fitted by Neil Stanbury in 2020. So arguably, while still looking like a mongrel on the bike, I have less of a need to compensate for poor bike position since Neil got to the root cause of me dropping my right hip and having my left leg squirrel around on the pedal to compensate for a 5 to 10mm leg length discrepancy. And that is why I feel that in late 2020, when I trialed the Look system for the first time and it felt okay, it wasn't to do with the fact that, as speculated, that the cleat was smaller like the Speedplay, or the fact that there was a better level of float compared to the Shimano. It was just because I have now been properly fitted and diagnosed with a leg length discrepancy. And I no longer need to be ruled by a specific pedal system to compensate for a poor bike position. Thus, I am still a fan of the Speedplay pedal system. But jumping between the two systems?
You may need to raise the seat a tiny fraction going from the Speedplay Power Links to your Favero. The stack height, I believe, is very slightly different. It's the sort of thing, I never remember the numbers, because if I'm ever doing this during a fit, we're going to look at you again afterwards anyway, and adjust things, because the different cleat systems will sometimes make people pedal in a different fashion. They will ankle differently depending upon the way the pedal system interacts with their foot.
Are you happy to see Eagle Beak still on my bike?
It's beautiful. I love it. I can't get enough of it. I think we should try other ones.
And that small positional change, when you consider the volume of bikes that come through the front door for review, jumping from one bike to the next and having different pedal systems and setups, it's just no longer practical. And additionally, I'm a big fan of Assioma. You know, I was a little bit apprehensive to say that in this video, hence why we've got a different scene that I'm adding in. And I was apprehensive because this is sponsored content. I get it. But that doesn't mean that I still can't genuinely believe in a product. And that is certainly the case with Assioma. I've been power training now for about 12 years. I've tested 5 different branded power meters. And to me, ease of use, reliability and accuracy, Assioma are the best that I have ever trialed and tested for the past 3 years now. In addition to now having a good bike fit and not needing ridiculous levels of float, I am now a Look convert.
So look at them vertically and just line up the back edge of the cleat as closely as you can. And then once you've got them perfectly lined up, making sure that the shoes are not on some kind of an angle like this or like this, line them up, snug them down, and then measure them again. You can do this with all sorts of funky sort of measuring jigs and things, but once you've got a shim stack in place on one shoe, a lot of the jigs don't really work. So you can then take a steel rule and we can measure, for example, from the front to the back of this rubberized section here, which happens to be, what, 52 millimeters? 52 millimeters. So look, the quality control of these, of most modern shoes is pretty good. The more places you can measure from, the better. So measure from the screw center at the back, right? From the back edge of the cleat to the screw center. 145 millimeters to the center of that screw.
This is why I bring my shoes to you, Neil.
Yes. Double, triple, quadruple check. And that's how you swap from one to the other. Yeah, I wish I had some better answers for you as to why you prefer one versus the other.
No, that's all right.
Don't know.
Yeah.
You just do.
I just do. Don't worry, people will say it's because I'm sold out. I'm getting paid millions from Assioma.
Yeah. That'll be me soon.
That's you,
Selling
isn't
Steve Hogg's shims.
Oh, yeah, exactly right.
I've got some uglier ones in. I think the worst SMP of all time is the Pro. I mean, look at the.
That is super eagle beak.
If that's not an eagle beak, I don't know what is.
Does it make a sound when you ride it?
It has, yeah, it has. It's a terrible seat. This is, I have one of these here to show people. These suit very specific people who are really tall, really heavy, with incredibly narrow sit bones. Wow. And that's just a really uncommon combination of things to happen. You've got to have a sit bone separation of like 80, 90 millimeters for these things to work. And
but you've got one, that's the main thing.
Got one.
Yeah, the eagle's very pronounced, isn't it?